Welcome to Small Business News, where we report the news and events of the week for small businesses.
And we had some commentary and our opinions of how this information could be used for actionable steps to improve your small business.
I'm Hector Garcia, CPA and advisor to small business owners.
And I'm Michael Lee, serial entrepreneur based here in Burlington, Vermont. Hector, I have this amazing article from this past week. This announcement from Amazon, obviously the behemoth that everyone knows, loves or hates, but they kicked off a career fair this past week for 33,000 remote jobs, averaging $150,000 a year. Just a wild, crazy amount of jobs, as well as the average pay being ridiculously more higher, like 3 times higher than the average U.S. salary in the nation. And so what's unique about this? Well, how does this relate to small business? The unique thing with these jobs is that these jobs are actually going to start out remote. But if you look at the fine print, like anything, these workers are only remote through January 8th, 2021. And you must be able to, at that point, work at one of these 4 locations: Denver, New York, Phoenix, and Seattle, the locations of the Amazon headquarters. So Denver, New York, Phoenix, and Seattle. So Amazon's taken this approach where obviously their offices aren't open right now. Their manufacturing centers are, but their offices are not. So you can work remotely. But then as of January 8th, you're going to have to relocate or be able to commute to one of the U.S. offices or cities. And most people may or may not know, Amazon is on a buying spree right now for office space because offices are empty. So they're buying former work locations, they're buying high rises, they're buying former other startup offices in order to create the space for these 33,000 employees. And my hunch is, they might say January 8th, but my hunch is they're probably going to extend that time frame as they get more information on the pandemic. So what's the strategy here? A unique strategy for small business, I think, is most small business owners, when they think about remote work and hiring, they think about hiring somebody to be in their office first and then giving them a remote opportunity. Well, what if you took this approach? What if you took Amazon's approach? What if you considered hiring somebody, letting them work remotely but then having to be in commuting distance or having to relocate to your small business for a future start date? So they have to make a commitment to be able to be very interesting positioning, and a lot of competition with Amazon in regards to talent. But obviously with 40 plus million people unemployed, I think Amazon's got its plenty of people that it's going to be able to pick from. Hector, any thoughts about this or any opinions about this?
Yeah, it's an interesting paradigm shift, like what you're saying, going from, hey, come work at the office, let me trust you, let me get to know you, let me make sure that you pass that bar, and then if we have flexibility later on, we'll let you work from home. And this is obviously, without counting for the pandemic, right? This is for, you were a business that was progressive enough to adapt the work from home environment, but that was your strategy. Now, obviously, the pandemic is sort of causing this, but a couple of things that I think are valuable too, other than the remote work concept, is the average pay too, right? This is an average pay of $150,000. So obviously these are not the warehouse people, right? These are probably the programmers or market managers or people that, bring new products into the website. I'm not sure. I mean, it might not even be related to Amazon.com that we know. It could be Amazon Web Services or any of the other things. But the point is that small businesses do compete with large businesses for talent. And a lot of small businesses don't have the brand name, can't give the employees the benefits that these large companies can. But what they've always been able to do that the big companies can't is be flexible. That was the whole thing about working for a small business, having a boss that's also kind of your friend, and he also works, or he or she work around the corner, and you kind of have this quasi-business personal relationship. That was always the advantage and why people stuck to working with a small business. But all of a sudden, even Amazon is saying, yeah, sure, you can work from home. Or I mean, I'm not sure if this is a bait and switch thing where then you have to go back into the office and work 60 hours a week. I guess time will tell. But the point is that now more than ever, when a business is offering a career to someone, a career choice, it needs to have a lot more personality, I think. Like you're competing with companies that have these super flexible and innovative ways of allowing people to work from home and in person, or transition back and forth based on seasonality, and obviously with the benefits and the pay and all that stuff. And like you said, they're investing in real estate. They're probably buying the coolest places to work at, right? With the best views and with built-in gyms and all that stuff. So as a small business, we can't compete with that. But the one thing that we can compete with is in our uniqueness. And uniqueness could be flexibility. It could be allowing people to work from home, or allowing people to create their own job titles per se. And I've been reading a couple of books that have been really changing my paradigm on that. But that's what I think. It's difficult to connect Amazon and small business, but I think you're right. I think there is an interesting paradigm shift, and I think we need to learn from it, especially if we're trying to attract top talent.
Yeah, and the only other thing I could think of is think about these 4 cities, the amount of these new jobs that Amazon's creating. If you think about starting a small business, you might want to consider one of these 4 cities, because every time a behemoth like an Amazon, a Microsoft, a Facebook hires in this number, the amount of activity and business activity that happens and begins to pick up in these cities is tremendous. So I would not underestimate exponential rate of economic increase and growth that's going to happen as these jobs are hired, and the recovery that'll happen in these. What about you, Hector? What's the next article for you?
Yeah, so I got. I'm always looking for resources for small business owners, even for myself, for people in my team that want to grow, because we always want to know how to manage our businesses better, right? And by doing some research, I found out that this coming week is Small Business Week from the SBA, and I think most people, when they think of the SBA, they think of the SBA loan, and they think that that's all the SBA does. As a matter of fact, SBA loans are a small part of the SBA. SBA is a government organization that has a lot of good information for small business owners, a lot of stuff about accounting, legal, marketing, business management, and operations, things that the larger businesses kind of take for granted because they hire all these consulting firms to do that. So they have this kind of almost a week-long conference starting as a 3-day-long conference starting September 22nd through September 24th. And they cover all sorts of stuff about, adapting in the pandemic and innovating and marketing and business management. I mean, it's 3 days worth of training and webinars. And I know they used to do in-person events. Of course, that's not a thing anymore, at least for the short term. So I strongly recommend you check out their website, sba.gov/NSBW. All this stuff is free, and I say free in air quotes because this is paid by the taxpayers. But it doesn't cost to attend. Let's call it that.
Yeah, when I first started my business, my line of credit was a SBA line of credit through my bank, and as we know, the SBA is known the best for backing or providing backing to business loans, and so most people don't know about them until you go get a business loan, and they are the largest holder and guarantor of business loans by far, and that's how local banks and national banks are able to loan so much money, is because the SBA takes the risk. At the funding of the government, therefore the taxpayer, they take the risk on most small business loans. So it's been great. And also, little known fact that 67% of every dollar spent to small business stays in a local community. And so the SBA is geared and helps small business owners. They do far more work and more lending, and more people access their resources and lending than they do venture capital money or angel money. Most people don't realize that a small business is started either by private money, family money, friends money, or the SBA, and that's the resource people access. So I'm really glad they're doing this week to highlight this. Yeah, this past week, Facebook announced a new small business resource hub. They wanted to highlight and make it simpler for small businesses to gain resources, but also to use their tools, and they're providing their tools at a very discounted rate, and also trying to streamline them. So there are many small businesses that weren't already accessing Facebook Instagram, and the variety of other tools that they had. Now they're making it a little more streamlined, both their messenger platforms as well as their business pages. And they're trying to help more small businesses get onto the platform and also create ads. I mean, I don't know about you, but I always had a very, very difficult time, even as a really well educated, tech friendly business owner. I had a hard time with Facebook ads. I just didn't understand how to do them right. I didn't understand how to be effective, how to reach the right audience. I always felt like I was doing it wrong. So Facebook is trying to make it better, easier. They know that they're going to be key to help with the recovery, just because so many people are driving traffic, no business is driving traffic ads, and also Instagram. And I think most people don't realize how integrated Instagram and Facebook have become, and also their ad network. And so this resource hub is not only going to help you just as an entrepreneur, small business owner, but also help you access some of the tools at a much simpler way. So just wanted to highlight this to people in case you didn't know that. Hector, you mentioned some books that you have read recently and things that kind of have helped you. What are some books that you've read lately? I know you've read some recently that come out. That would be interesting for our audience.
Sure. Yeah, I'll mention those, but I wanted to talk about the Facebook thing for a second. So, yeah, I when I started my business about 12 years ago, Facebook really wasn't a big thing. A couple of years later, I did try Facebook ads, and like you said, I know what I was doing, and I think I was spending way too much money for the amount of results I was getting from it. But when it comes to Facebook specifically, my philosophy is, if you're doing just Facebook ads, you need to have a lot of backing for it. However, if you use Facebook to build a community, and I'm going to show you, there's a community that I created, build, called the QB Power User community, and basically it's a community of people that use QuickBooks, and that's kind of, in my profession, that's what we use. And in this community, we talk about different problems that we have, and people proactively help each other solve the problems. But if you have a community in Facebook and you are the leader at helping others, you will get business by default, and you don't need an ad for that. Now, you do need to spend quite a lot of time reading what people are asking for and solving the problems, and basically becoming technical support for whatever thing that you do, technical support for free for a while to build that notoriety. So there are ways to leverage Facebook for business if you build a community around your expertise, and you spend time, either yourself or your team, manning it per se, just kind of combing it for questions and being the first one to answer questions. So I agree with you. If you were to use Facebook strictly to do ads to try to drive traffic to your shopping cart or whatever, you need to have a really innovative product that looks really pretty in a 30-second ad for it to really drive clicks. Otherwise, it's really more about connecting with people that you wouldn't otherwise connect in a physical space, but you are connected in a digital space. And the idea is to build a community around a central theme, right? So I don't know, you also have a community in Facebook, and people that follow you, and when you post something, people find something about you and your business once you post it. So I think that Facebook, it's a really great tool, especially if you're getting started with small business marketing via web, to build a community rather than to just push it for ads. But on your question about the books, I've actually I read one of them, and I'm sort of halfway through the other one, of two books that came out in the last couple of weeks. I'll start with the first one. This is kind of the heavier one. This is like 400 plus pages, tons of history around corporate structure and the way humans organize themselves in business and in society. It's called Humanocracy by Hamel. And the main theme around this is that businesses today, they're heavily bureaucratic, and they're heavily top-down, and they're mostly about the top-down control, right? So you got the CEO who talks to the VP, and the VP who talks to the business manager who talks to the team leader who talks to the grunt or whatever, right? The line level employee. And through this sort of linear top-down approach, people are only concerned about delegating the tasks down, and then the people on the bottom are only concerned about satisfying that need that their boss gives them, and they spend their entire workday just satisfying their boss and what their boss needs. And this is sort of hidden bureaucracy, right? So when we think of bureaucracy, we think about moving the paper around the office or whatever, right? We think about getting the approval from this person and the red tape and the meeting before the meeting and the approval and the budget meeting. But a lot of bureaucracy is just built into our structures. What they're saying in this book is that the way the businesses need to be organized, they need to be organized around the talents of the individuals, and give the individuals free range to be creative, and free range to kind of develop their own thing, like allow the business to grow organically rather than in this like predetermined way. And he's got a really awesome quote that is worth saying, which is, if you organize your business in a slot shape, you organize the sort of the organization structure in this slot shape, you will get slot shaped results, which I think is just mind blowing. Like, you're right. If we organize this to be all cookie cutter, this is the boss of this is who can do this, and this is the chain of command, you're going to get results that are limited to that structure. You're never going to get something new, something creative, something innovative coming out of it. So I think the book is fantastic. It's kind of a heavy read because it's really mostly just taking down traditional management. But he's proposing a revolution of the mind when it comes to management and people structures. And it's not that difficult, because you can go back, 500 years, and before we had these systems in place, probably even less, maybe even 250 years, where the systems in place where we have democracy and we have people kind of working with each other. We had this system where, depending on who you were and where you were born and who you were a son of or a daughter of, that meant who you were in the economic system, right? It was all caste system. There really wasn't a lot of free trade and economics, and people were basically born with a predetermined fate of what they're supposed to do. And that was a paradigm shift that we as society had to make. So he's saying that we are now in the next paradigm shift, where there needs to be a boss and a CEO and this structure, and then we should have this like really horizontal and fluid structures in organizations. So what do you think about that? I hope I didn't butcher the book for the author, but that's kind of what I got from it, and I think it's a great way to like sort of rethink how you should structure your business as you're growing.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and I think it makes me think of two things. One is the accessibility of leaders. Oftentimes, leaders, as they grow or they begin to grow an organization, they become less accessible. Instead of trying to make themselves more accessible to more people and figuring out a way for everybody in an organization to be able to access you and not feel feedback. So that's one thing I think about. And secondly, this actually requires employees, just from day one, even entry level ones, to rethink this structure, because we've trained a whole society, Hector, on this corporate structure that we're trying to tear down, which probably in many ways has been influenced by the military, has been influenced by the post-World War II, because everybody, World War I, World War II, the whole society went into military mode, went into war mode, and we structured around the military and backing the government to fight war. So
military and factories, I think both. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So now we're not in that age. We're long past that age. Now we're around more small teams, flat structure, accessibility, multiple types of leaders, and the ability to contribute, and a lot more power as an individual contributor, which the internet's created that ability, right? Globalization and the internet has given the ability for every single person to contribute value in some way. But I think it takes retraining as a leader, as well as retrain everybody to not have the expectation that they need to be spoon-fed commands, but instead that everybody has to have kind of a entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship focus. And so I really like that. What's the other book that you were mentioning?
Yeah, the other book is called What's Your And, but I'll add one more thing, because it reminded me of something that's in the book too, which he's talking about redefining leadership, right? Leadership leadership should be when someone leads the way and others follow, even if there's no titles involved, right? So strip all the titles away, and then so you can have people that are leaders within the organization, and their leaders are their own thing, right? The leaders about what they're passionate about. They're leaders about what they're good at. They're leaders about what they champion, right? So I think that's pretty interesting. And the other book I'm reading is What's Your End, which is very different books, but it happened to be that they both were released in September of 2020, and I kind of read them at the same time, and the ideas were kind of jumbled in a good way. So, What's Your End is that's John Garrett's book, which, by the way, I think you were in his podcast, right?
Yeah. I was recently in his podcast not too long ago.
Yeah, not too long ago. So that's all intertwined. So, so John Garrett's actually an ex-accountant, a comedian, and a corporate public speaker. It's kind of motivational speaker. I don't think he'll like that title, but so what he does is he talks about a little bit of accounting, but mostly around the way corporate structure works and the way corporate culture is, and then he kind of sprinkles some comedy in there and kind of makes fun of the things that you gotta make fun within the organization. And his big theme is that you are not just your profession, right? You are more than that. And when you get off work, you have your own hobby and your own things that you're passionate about. And that stuff is your personal life, quote unquote. And we tend to, individually, we tend to hide it and make it our own thing. You know, we don't bring that into the workplace because that's not professional to do so. Maybe a few people you work with know about it, but it's not really commonly brought out and talked about in a public way. You are your profession, you are your position, and that's it. And what John is trying to explain here is that, look, you know, what makes each of the individual people individual and human is is the stuff that that they value outside of work. And as organizations, we need to allow them to bring that into the organization, even if it's not completely unrelated to what your organization is, right? So let's say you have an accounting practice and you got 6 accountants, and they all do their own thing. One person does mountain climbing. The other person does, I don't know, is a Lego enthusiast. Another person is a movie buff. Someone else, I don't know, it's almost semi-professional swimmer, whatever. We should allow, he proposes, we should allow these people to bring the passion inside the organization, and the organization itself sort of sponsor and help and cultivate those personal traits, those personal talents, to highlight that person's individuality, highlight that person's passion, and allow people to build a culture around being comfortable with who you are, what you bring into the table. So it's a really big, important thing to think about individually, right? Because if you don't have if you're just this monolith of whatever profession you're in, it's very easy to compare you with another monolith of that profession. But if you are very passionate towards a cause or a thing, and you let it know, yeah, you scare some people, which is fine, but the few that you keep will love you and will accept you and probably would want to work with you because of how interesting that one thing is. So I love the message. And as a matter of fact, at the beginning, I was like, this is kind of simple. You know, I follow his podcast for a while. It really wasn't something that jumped at me until he wrote it on the book and talked about the cultural impact that can have in your organization, and also made me think deeply about, you know, my employees. You know, am I doing this? Am I allowing people to bring those talents into the office? And that's something that's always been a taboo, right? Like, don't do too much of that personal stuff in the office. What are your thoughts about that?
No, that's exactly what John and I talked about on a show, because culture I built in my business, and for every candidate we bring in that wants to work for us, I tell them up front in their interview with me that we want everyone to bring their whole self. So to bring their whole self means bring everything about them, including the most important things to them, the things that are important to them, whether it's their faith, whether it's the politics they're involved with, whether it's their child's school, whether it's a hobby, whatever it is, we tell them that we want to bring that whole self. So I let people know, hey, what are the things that I'm passionate about, and that they're going to hear about those things when I lead at the company. But that also means I'm inviting them to also do the same thing. And so that scares them if they don't want to be in an environment where people are going to be their whole selves or bring their and to work, that we're not going to be the right place for them. And so John and I had a really great time because I totally agreed with him. I felt like growing up and all the jobs I had, I didn't really get to know the real person that was at work because they always had something secret they were hiding, which was what? The thing outside of work, the thing they were really passionate about. Because rarely do you meet, we know this, rarely do you meet a person whose primary passion is the actual job. It's actually pretty rare. Maybe it's coming more common now because of how much freedom we have to choose what we want, but it's rare. And so to get to know the real person, you got to know what they're passionate about outside of work. And that's what John's getting at. And I think if we are able to integrate that at work, we'll all end up becoming more passionate about our workplace and our jobs. And we'll create cultures that we really, really, and that are. So yeah, no, I think that's so. Hector, this has been great this week. Another great topic, another great articles that we've learned, and also some books that you read. Thanks for bringing those to.
Likewise, we got episode 2 in the back. So strongly recommend Watch Your And by John Garret. It's a light read. It's like 200 pages. And it's very conversational. It's really cool. And also check out his podcast. This is a free plug. He's not paying us yet, but I would, I'll get a check if he wants to send it. One thing I'll ask for the people that are watching this or listening to this. This is episode 2. Michael and I are trying to figure out what this small business news looks like. It's a weekly format. It gets released every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. We would love to know your comments. What do you think? What topics should we talk about? And send those via social media or whatever. Interesting small business news that we could cover, and we'll absolutely cover them in a weekly basis. Michael, thank you again, and I'll see you everybody next week.